Welcome to the Latte Quilt online introduction. My name is Serena Smith and I'm going to be the one leading you through the process of completing the Latte Quilt. The Latte Quilt is an elegant quilt that combines machine embroidery, decorative stitches, and a combination of fabrics as well as a host of techniques that you can incorporate into so many other projects. You will learn so much in completing this quilt. Plus, by the end of the class, you'll also have a beautiful quilt that you can keep for many years to come. I'm going to show you some different fabrics, some supplies that we use with the quilt, as well as let you look at some of the quilt blocks. So let's get started. The Latte Quilt is based on the Latte Quilt book that Carrie Hay wrote. Carrie Hay is an excellent, wonderful, fantastic designer from Australia, and she put together a combination of satin and muslin fabrics to create an elegant latte quilt. So first of all, you're going to have the book to complete the class. I'm going to open up the page here and we're going to find the full scale diagram of the quilt. And many of you already have this book, so you can see the quilt in its entire detail. This quilt only uses two different fabrics. It only uses a muslin or a cotton fabric and then a polyester satin. And the polyester satin, there's a combination of using the right side and the wrong side of the fabrics. And that's what gives you a little bit of difference between the two fabrics and gives the quilt a really, really unique look. So you can look in your Latte Quilt book to see the whole quilt and how it's put together. And I'm going to show you just a couple of the blocks that I have here. This one is the parasol block. This one has a lot of decorative stitches. Have you ever used a double needle? Many of you have. Have you ever used a double needle with decorative stitches? That's exactly what you do on this block. It is so unique and so fun to see how she has put together all of these decorative stitches. This block is stitched on the wrong side of the satin, and that gives it just a little bit of a duller texture. A lot of times the right side of the satin, which is shinier, like the top part right here, is used for certain aspects of the quilt, like the sashing and some of the little blocks and pieces, just to give it a more elegant touch to the whole quilt. Now some of the blocks are done with muslin. This one is muslin. This one is the Royal Bluebell quilt, and there's a lot of different designs that are used, as well as a ton of decorative stitches that you're going to learn how to use those stitches on your machine. All the embroidery designs are included in a CD that is in your Latte Quilt book. Some of those designs I have revised and combined just to make them easier to stitch. So as we go along in the class, if there are any designs that I've changed or revised, I'm going to send those to you so you'll have them. But you will have all the designs in the format you need on the CD. This one is the Rambling Rose block, and personally this is just about one of my favorite blocks. This one is unique because it has little seed beads on it. Seed beads in this quilt really enhance the quilt and just add a little bit of sparkle to it. These are the seed beads right here. Kind of show you what they look like. They're very little itsy bitsy. By the time you get done sewing this quilt, you're probably not going to want to see any of these seed beads for a long time, but it really enhances the quilt. This one is the scrolled border block, and this one combines a border corner embroidery design, enhancing it with decorative stitches. And there will be quilting that's put in and around a lot of the blocks. This one is the Cation the Cation corner block, and this one is another one that's really, really elegant to stitch. Even on the muslin fabric, these designs are absolutely gorgeous. Have you ever used a triple needle? Before I had done this quilt, I had never used a triple needle. I wasn't even sure that they made such a thing. Well, triple needle is just fun to use, and you're going to learn how to do triple needle grid work. This is done for the center medallion block, and we're going to stitch some grid work like this with a triple needle with embroidery thread, and it just really gives the quilt an elegant look to it. Then, of course, the hardest block of all, the center medallion. Don't panic when you see this block, because there is a lot of embroidery, there is a lot of decorative stitching, there are a lot of parts and pieces to actually make the whole center medallion. but we're going to do it in steps. And when you do it step by step, you can get it done. This is the center part of the embroidery, and this, what's really neat about this is continuous border embroidery, meaning that you have to take a design like this and match it to create a complete border. You cannot stitch this whole thing in one hooping. Some of you with smaller hoops will have to hoop quite a few times to be able to do the whole border. Some of you with larger hoops won't have to hoop quite as many times. You'll be able to get a larger part of the embroidery in your hoop. But this is a valuable technique how to take any embroidery design, is what you're basically going to learn, and create a border with it. Match it up so you have no gap between design A and design B. It's fun, it's easy to do. Don't let it panic you if you haven't done it before, because it is not that difficult. We're going to use templates, we're going to use marking pins, and we're going to basically take it and put it on our fabric and then stitch it out exactly the way we want it. Well, I've kind of given you a rundown of some of the blocks that are in the quilt, and now that we've looked at some of the blocks, I want to show you some of the different fabrics and colors that you can use to create your own latte quilt. The latte quilt, as outlined in the book, as Carrie Hay has done it, is done in latte colors, cream and tan. It's done with unbleached muslin and then a cream polyester satin. It makes for an elegant combination, but some of you may be wanting to do different colors. That is entirely perfectly fine. You can stitch the latte quilt in any color that you wish to stitch it in. Let me show you a few color combinations that you can use. You will want to avoid not too dark of a color. If you get too dark of a color like black, although I have seen it stitched in black, your embroidery threads are not going to show up as much. So I would recommend that you don't get too dark of a color. Stick with light to medium colors, because then all of your threads are going to have more of a sheen and show up more in your fabrics. This is a little bit darker combination, and this is a teal satin, and then it's put with a fairy frost cotton fabric. And let me explain fairy frost fabric. Many of you probably know what this is, but for those of you that don't, fairy frost is basically a tone-on-tone fabric, and it has just a little bit of sheen brushed on to the top of the fabric. It really makes the cotton fabric just really shine, and your embroidery just looks gorgeous on it. So you don't have to use fairy frost. You can use unbleached muslin, like is done in the book. You can use a Kona cotton, like a solid cotton fabric, if you want a different color but don't want the sheen of the fairy frost. The fairy frost fabrics just have a little bit of tone-on-tone texture to them, which really looks nice when you have your different colors of thread stitched on there. As well, it just has a little bit of sheen to it, which just enhances the elegance of your quilt. So this is a sage teal tone, and you can see the satin's just a little bit darker than the cotton fabric. That's the way it's outlined in the book. You just kind of follow their color scheme. White is very stark, so keep that in mind, but you can do white. This is white. You could use bleached muslin, or this one is a tone-on-tone fairy frost fabric, and it just gives it a little bit of sheen, gives it a little bit of color to it as well with the tone-on-tone fabrics. Now, another very popular color is blue, and this is a light blue color combination. This is a light blue satin, and this is a Wedgwood fairy frost, and this one just has a little bit of white and light blue texturing in it that just really brings out the light blue color. And then of course over here we have the traditional colors, which is the muslin, and then this one is the cream satin. This one's a pheno cream. And then this one is the champagne fairy frost. And so you could use the muslin, you could use the champagne with the satin fabric. So those are just some color ideas. You don't have to stick with any of these colors that are here. Whatever color you go with, you're bound to have a gorgeous quilt. There are a lot of color combinations. Pick a color you like. Pick something that goes with a room in your house, and start stitching it.